teachers are owed some 50 million Ghana cedis. So they decided to strike, legal or illegal. And they did this at a very critical time when Ghana ranks 116th out of 157 countries on the World Bank's Human Capital Index, which says, quote, "The education in Ghana is not of good quality," unquote. And that teacher absenteeism and idleness is a major problem. Half of the pupils who go to school don't get taught because of teacher absenteeism and idleness. Well, the government got the courts to compel them to return to the classroom, at least for 10 days. Is this the solution? More than 4 in 10 Ghanaians are not taking sides yet in a presidential race, outnumbering declared supporters of the ruling party as well as its challengers. That's the latest Afrobarometer survey. When people were asked the question, if you were to vote in the presidential elections like tomorrow, and they asked this question in October and September, more Ghanaians said they would not vote or didn't know or wouldn't say how they would vote. Bottom line, if elections were held today, many Ghanaians will not vote. At the end of the voting, whether there is a new register or not, which is causing a lot of controversy now, which we will discuss, none of the 2 major parties will make a one-touch victory. We will discuss that. Scars of the Revolution is a documentary. We ask, is it for fuller closure on the disturbing matters of the revolution, or it's mere useless history telling? I'm Samson Ladi Ayenini. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And to my take, as I promised last week, is dedicated to asking you to vote for women and persons with disability. Out of 18,500 nominations that the Electoral Commission has received for the District Assembly elections, only 909 are women. Out of 38,500 plus nominations that have been received, only 375 are women. So what exactly is going on? When you check our parliament of 275, there are only 38 women. That's 7.6%. Meanwhile, our constitution in Article 36, Clause 6, specifically says we should take practical, conscious, deliberate steps to integrate women in the mainstream, particularly in the economic development of the country. We shouldn't be paying lip service to that. So I advocate that the 30% appointment that the president does, we could dedicate that to the women for the district assembly elections once we are not, we haven't changed the process yet. And in the last 2 months, okay, Kokubako says he votes no. In the last 2 months, yeah, I know. I know, he says it's a joke. In the last 2 months, I have moderated literally every anti-corruption program in this country, high level and local level. There's a consensus. Women are less corrupt or not corrupt. That's the reason I say you vote for them. If you doubt the cost of corruption, just watch this.
But he said I'm doing my driving test now. Almost see my feeling.
Oh, how?
Almost the bad side too. Almost my name.
Oh, bad side. Bad side.
I boss feeling so you can be when I come to me one and my license.
So what do you want me to do for you?
I remember I come on and or bomb.
3,500. Let's just walk around it. Yeah.
Oh, sprint out.
Okay, make it 1,000.
1,000. Okay, 1,000. I'm watching my banana that bro. Right. That's
tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I make Accra. Yeah, Accra. Last bus. Last bus.
Accident. Yes. So which hospital? Which hospital? Please, do all you can to keep her alive. I beg you. I will be there right away. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I had a call from this hospital. Where's my mother?
You are Mr.
Donald.
Mr. Donald.
Yes.
Well, it's a good news, bad news situation.
Good news.
The good news is that your mother is still alive. Wait. The nurses are working on her. You can't go in there now.
Right.
But the bad news is that she lost both her legs. So she'll have to be on wheels for the rest of her life. But I want you to take heart. You know, this was actually a fatal accident. A lot of people lost their lives. It was only her and the driver who survived. That's the driver. And it was even his brother.
You?
now. Almost see my feeling.
Oh, how?
Almost the bad side too. Almost my name. I remember I come on and or bomb.
3,500. Let's just walk around it. Yeah.
Oh, sprint out.
All right, thanks to all of you. Thanks particularly to Transmedia Network and to the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Charles Yao Mausi, thank you very much. Now for our radio listeners who couldn't see what was going on, if you think corruption is far away from you, it can be closer than you thought. This driver needed a license. He wasn't qualified. He was disqualified, so he got another officer in the DVLA. This is a theater DVLA, not the real DVLA. We know it goes on there. He got there, the guy took a bribe and gave him the license without the guy passing the driving test, only to realize later that this same driver has killed almost all the passengers on his vehicle. His mother was one of them. Let's be careful. All right, so my guests are seated. And this morning, we are dealing with education, dealing with voting, elections, and also scars of the revolution. My guests for this morning are Abdul Malik Kwekubako, who is a regular panelist and editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Also here in the studio is Dennis J. Jumo, and Dennis is a lawyer and has a passion for some of the issues that we'll be raising, particularly on the education front. And I'm particularly excited also that we are joined by a teacher and also someone who teaches history at the University of Ghana to assist us, particularly for the aspect that will deal with the scars of the revolution. Please forgive me. I'm just looking for my little write-up about my guests who are not that familiar to me, and some of whom are appearing today. Okay, Kwamina Ahina Kwakwashi is from the head of salaries of the head of salaries, working conditions at the department of at that department in NAT. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Right, so we will be finding out why you are on this strike, and even though you have called it off for only 10 days, then what happens after the 10 days, and whether or not following the release that your monies are supposed to be paid, have you received the monies? Our next guest, Dr. Kwame Asa Asante. He is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Thank you also very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so gentlemen, we look at the education sector first, and we are asking questions why we got to this point in the first place. So we should start with you. We will be sharing also views from some of your compatriots and some of your leaders who in the course of this week have been speaking about the matters that have happened. But more particularly, we want to know why you had to take this decision at this particular time, when we know that there have been challenges with the system, particularly for the SHS students.
All right. Thank you so much. And let me greet your viewers and listeners. This arrest that we are talking about started somewhere in 2012.
2012.
Yes. Now, it came about as a result of people who had been recruited by district directors of education, and they were teaching Ghanaian children. Then somewhere in 2013, remember that was the period that government had then put in place started negotiating with the World Bank for this extended credit facility. So we had a letter from the Ministry of Finance, and we attended a meeting, and what they were saying was that, yes, they knew that some people have been recruited, they don't have financial clearance, but what they intend doing is that they are going to pay them only 3 months of those arrears. Then the rest, they develop some templates, I think 3 of them for our sector, One was for upgrading and promotions. One was for recruitment. And then the third one was for re-engagement and reinstatement. And that if you are one of them a victim, if you are a victim, then you have to go to the call center, which in this case is the district education office, take this form, fill it, and then attach all the relevant documents, including your recruitment letter, date of assumption of duty, and all sorts of things, including the RPPD input forms. You attach them, and then you submit it to the call center. The call center will then forward it to GS headquarters, and then it will be forwarded again to Ghana Audit Service for them to do the validation. Indeed, so this was the process that we went through up to somewhere in 2016. When they were doing it, the payments were not forthcoming, even though there were instances that they had then validated, but the payments were not forthcoming. So if you could remember, somewhere early February or March 2016, we engaged, and that was when they said they were then going to do their validation. So we agreed. They did their validation. They made some payments in 2016. They made some payments. When the government changed over in 2017, they continued with some payments. Then we realized that a chunk of our people, over 30,000 of them, are still not being paid. So we started discussions on these things with our employers. And then I remember somewhere in, I think, 2018 or so, they introduced this Human Resource Management Information System, which was the HR part of the payroll. And it was Public Services Commission that was managing it. Now, when they introduced that system, we had some challenges, serious challenges. And indeed, it will interest you to know that it is only in Ghana Education Service that when you are promoted, your job does not necessarily change. For example, if you are a principal superintendent and you are teaching in class 1, if you are promoted to assistant director 2, you will still be teaching class 1. Your job does not necessarily change. But in the other public services, it doesn't work like that. So initially when they were designing that thing, we told them, they invited us, we told them that thing, that you are trying to design it in this fashion. It will not work for us. Then subsequent meetings, they didn't invite us again. So they designed that, and when they rolled it on, then it became a problem. Because if, for example, Joy FM here, we have a school, and let's say it is a junior high school and we have 5 teachers. 2 of them are principal superintendents, 2 are assistant director 2s, and 1 is assistant director 1. If one of the principal superintendents gets promotion to assistant director 2, they can't do this thing. They can't do the upgrading or the promotion this thing on the system, because the system knows that Joy FM JHS has only 2 principal superintendents, 2 assistant directors, 2 assistant director 2s, and then 1 assistant director. So the system will not pick, so that we have 2 assistant directors, and then 1 assistant director 1, and then 1 principal. So it will not pick at all. So it means they can't do it. So that was the challenge that we faced somewhere around from about July up to August. So on 12th September, I wrote a letter on behalf of my General Secretary to National Labour Commission about our intention to go on strike if they don't work on this human resource thing. And indeed, we are grateful to the President of the Republic. I think about 2 or 3 days later, we had a meeting, and then they told us that they are now going to take teachers out of the Human Resource Management Information System, and that controller and GES, controller should give us the RPPD2 platform, and GES should be able to work on all promotions which were outstanding. And then from there, they will go ahead and pay the arrears, all types of arrears. So we had a meeting with them. And this was somewhere in early, I think late September. So we came back with a roadmap. And that GES said they will be able to do all the inputting on their system. So the teachers will be paid at the end of September. Then with regard to the legacy arrears, in fact, we have 2 batches of arrears. The one from 2012 to 2016 September is what we refer to as the legacy arrears.
Okay, and that's about how much?
And that is about 30,000 people.
That's about affect about
30,000 people.
Okay.
So they said they will, controller would then work when they had paid the October salary, because we had then reached an agreement that they don't want their arrest to be added to the main salaries. So it will be paid as a supplement after they have paid the October salaries. So we agreed. And that was for the legacy arrest. And we waited, October came and nothing happened, right? Then we still engaged them. Then at the end of November, controller gave them the data, which they claim is about 1,800 or so. Even that one,
these engagements you were talking about were engagements at the level of the Labor Commission?
No, these were engagement at the level of national, was the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations.
But you're saying that the engagements were triggered by your notice of 12th September.
Exactly.
To the Labor Commission.
To the Labor Commission.
Of your intention to strike.
To strike.
Okay.
And even at the letter that we sent to Labor Commission, they did not even respond. And that is the reason why subsequently we did not even inform them. Because if you don't respect us, we also not respect you in the same measure.
I see.
So we were engaging with Controller, Ghana Education Service, and Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations. Then we were told that Controller was going to give them the data after they have paid their November salaries, so that they would then be able to prepare a supplementary PV and pay the legacy arrest by middle of December.
Middle of December?
No, middle of November for the legacy one.
Okay.
Good. So on 9th of November, Controller gave GES the data, right? They gave them the data. Then on 15th of November, the IPPD coordinator called me around 6:30. When I went to the office, we had close to about 20 people, teachers, mostly from Suryani and Akimoda, and then I think Central Region, who were there, and they have brought the same forms that they submitted way back in 2016, for which Ghana Audit Service did the verification or the validation. Then I said, what is happening? His response was that when they looked through the data, they have observed some anomalies. I said, fine. As the controller payroll system, there are a lot of anomalies. So this one, it is not a big deal. All that we are interested in is that segregate those anomalies and pay the rest that they don't have issues.
Okay. Then
we lingered on from 15 November up to the point when we declared a strike.
Okay. So 30 teachers, over 30 teachers you say affected?
Over 30,000.
30,000,
yes.
Sorry. 30,000 teachers affected. The teacher population is what?
The teacher population, we are, no, on this one, it affects both the teachers and the non-teachers.
Right.
So with the Ghana Education Service payroll, we are talking close to about 350,000.
350,000.
Yes.
So it's...
And initially,
it's okay to say this is a fraction.
No. You see, the thing affected over 120,000 people.
Over 120,000?
20,000 people.
Okay. I see. Right. So when you were going on the strike, it is not the case that you have been told that the monies will be processed and payment will be effected in December. That's not the case.
No, that one we rejected it.
You were promised that, but you rejected it.
You see, the issue
that was like the second or third promise. Is that the case?
I mean, several of the promises.
Okay.
You see, we were expected to receive the legacy arrest in November. When they had
middle of November.
That's middle of November.
Yes.
Then December, middle of December, we received that of the second batch, which is from October 2016 up to December 2018.
Since you didn't get the November one, you thought that
controller itself they couldn't even work on the second batch.
Okay, but the first batch they had done their work and submitted the PVs
to GES for them to review it, and that is a normal practice. You see, so I don't understand why they
delayed.
delay.
Appreciate them when they said we're talking about arrears totaling 49,900,000.
That figure is not correct.
928,000.
Something, that figure is not correct. That figure is monies that they release for the payment or transfer grant and other allowances like guide.
They were saying
that is not the amount.
They were saying that if they went ahead to process it, the anomalies was going to cost the state as much as over 11 million.
And I'm saying that was not the issue.
We need to clarify. Who said what about the 49 million thing you are quoting?
Yes, that's the release.
No, check the date.
That 49 million was an amount they released somewhere in September for the payment or transfer grant, TNTs, and all those things.
Okay.
And these are money to be paid on the table. Yeah, you pay salaries on the table in this country.
Officially, who has said that has something to do
with this release? This release that came in is not actually addressing what you have been fighting for.
This is an old thing that somebody just put there to confuse people.
It's not official. Somebody just put it on social media.
Put it there on social media to just confuse people that salaries, do you pay salaries on the table?
So are you able to give us an idea how much is involved as far as the legacy arrears and those you have been fighting for is concerned?
No, for how much? No, I don't have any idea.
You don't have an idea?
Yes.
Okay.
That was only controller and possibly GS people who can give you that kind of information.
Okay. So, Kweku, from the narration that he's giving, since I became aware, and it's not to show any bias, since I became, politically aware and could follow national issues, I don't recall ever hearing that Labour was right when they took an action, particularly teachers. They have always been wrong. Why?
Well, I'm not too sure what you mean by your thing. I am pro-Labour, instinctively, almost always. But of course, we live in a law-governed society. So whilst instinctively I'm for Labour, anytime they embark on some industrial action, I put within that whole action within the context of the legal regime that guides our conduct.
Okay.
What are they supposed to do when they have dispute with their employers relative to this Labour Act that we all put together? And I asked myself whether in this particular instance, whether what they did, the action they took, actually can be defended within the context of this act. I understand the frustrations and all those things, but if we are a law-governed society, let's proceed from that regime. Now, I heard him talk about notice that was given to the National Labour Commission somewhere in September.
12th of September.
Yeah, clearly we cannot connect that to their present action relative to the legislation.
And that's the reason I asked whether it was the notice that triggered discussions within Labour Commission.
I got that drift.
If it was within Labour Commission, I would have asked a different question. But he says all of the discussions were not done at Labour Commission.
I heard you, and I knew you were right in that kind of question you asked. Now, this statement they issued, the trade unions, I think it's dated 5th December 2019. In this statement, they served notice that they will be embarking on the strike action effective Monday, 9th December 2019. So they used the press conference to serve notice to the whole nation, presumably Labour Commission included, not legally sustainable in that sense. And it's a matter of 5th to 9th is 4 days. The Labour Commission thing, when I read it, I'm not a legal, the Labour Act, when I read it, I see a certain 7 days if you serve notice to the Labour Commission. So clearly, again, this is inconsistent with what is captured here in terms of the law. No. Now, so having established the fact that in terms of the legal regime, the present action is unsustainable, in my candid opinion. Okay. Regardless of my instance.
So give me a minute there.
Yeah.
Is this your notice to the Labour Commission or to your employer about your intended strike?
This was a notice to our employer because I've said that on 12th September we sent a notice to a National Labour Commission and did not even acknowledge.
12th September, did you give when you were going to strike?
When we sent that notice to them, I think about a day later
about 2-3 days.
Yeah, we had a press conference. So we wrote to them and then gave them a copy of the a copy of the press conference, right? And then in that press conference...
Still in September? Still in September?
Yeah, still in September.
Okay.
And in that thing, when we said they should then remove the Human Resource Management Information System to pave way for the payment of all types of arrears, which I'm saying that the government did that. But Labour Commission itself did not even acknowledge the letter.
Okay. So as far as you are concerned,
so we had
as far as you are
nothing to
concerned, the 7 days notice required by law, you had more than satisfied it because your notice is 12th of September. Interesting. But when you did this press conference and you served notice again that you are going to begin a strike, who were you serving the notice to?
We served the notice to our employer.
Your employer?
Yes.
So the latest in time is what we have to take as your notice. Is that also?
As far as the legal issues, now
this means this cancelled your earlier notice. You don't recognize it that way? Okay, so Koku, proceed.
But I'm actually wondering how this could have been a notice to the employers. If you read the first paragraph, we, the three teacher unions, the Ghana National Association of Teachers, NAT, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers, Ghana, CCTGH, have invited you this morning to apprise you of developments and happenings on the education front. The you here is the media, if you like, at the public, not the employers, if we are talking in terms of very defined extensions, lines of extensions. So that's what it was. They went on. Clearly, it doesn't. The Labour Act doesn't support the action.
So even if this was a declaration, official declaration of strike, and not a notice, he says it's a notice to the employer. If this is not a notice, then his argument about the 12th September notice is what will hold.
But you see something. 12th September. I assume you without admitting that notice that was served on the National Labour Commission was in consonance with this act. What happened between 12th September and December 9th?
Okay.
What happened?
Right, proceed.
Nothing happened. So it means they themselves, by their conduct, actually made that whole notice redundant and proceeded to do other negotiations with their employers. That's the assumption I get, because if you read the same statement they issued, they talk about a meeting with they invited to a meeting by the Ministry of Employment and Labour Relations.
He spoke about it
himself.
Yes,
which he did. So it means that beyond that September thing, they were actually engaging their employers or other institutional stakeholders in order to find a solution to the matter.
Right.
So relative to the law, it's unsustainable. Their position is unsustainable. Their commentary about with it too is unsustainable. That's my candid opinion. That doesn't take away the fact that perhaps there's some value to their case. And I agree. Look, it's a systemic thing. The former education minister, Madam Jane Obukwajimai, recently I think I have a copy here, where he made a point in terms, this began the validation process. Am I right?
Yes.
And she made the observation that, look, here's a situation where they employ teachers. They work 2 years without pay, sometimes because they don't even have appointment letters.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of system is that? So there's a real problem out there, and it is not peculiar to this time. It's a deep-rooted thing.
And the problem has led to a lot of corruption.
It doesn't make sense.
Within the controller.
Yes.
Because teachers, after 2 years of accumulation of their salaries,
fantastic.
Some of them get approached that come and see so and so, come and see so and so, we'll work your salaries out. What you need to do is promise us a percentage. And some go, they promise the percentage, and they get their salaries done for them. Those who don't do that remain unpaid.
Yes, and that is true. And that's why I have some sympathy for the teachers. But in dealing with the issue, you cannot ignore the law. We have to take that into consideration. Otherwise, we better start throwing this into the dustbin, or perhaps call for amendments if we think it's unrealistic in terms of legislative impact. But in the absence of that, you got to go according to the legal regime. Otherwise, this will be a vote for constitutional lawlessness. Now, let's come to the details. I realize, having listened to all sides, there's a certain discrepancy relative to figures and payments that have been made. And it's happened even here. You asked some few questions about figures. What I have seen, and this is from official GES source, so it's only one side of the story. Reading the teacher's statement, I realized that they're relying on some sources at the Controller and Accountant General.
That's right.
That is supposed to have done some validation. And on that basis, they think that what the Controller and Accountant General presented should have been the basis for the movement releases. Now, yeah, please. No, I don't mind. It may help if he wants to make a point.
I think you should conclude. Take a note, make a note, and then I'll let you speak to.
See,
any things you have to.
What the figures I have here, and these are subject to verification, and I'll conclude on it. The entirety of the applications, from what I heard, was 120,232. I heard him a few moments ago make a 120,000 over 120,000.
That's those affected.
Yes,
not the amount.
That was good. Yeah, those affected and going through validation.
Right.
They have validated, according to GES and the subject to verification and challenge, 92,164 validated. 87,556 fully paid. Then 1,200 cleared for payment December 19th, 2019. This means in the next 5 days. GS's position is that as we speak, they have 647 outstanding where they see what they call major discrepancies. The major discrepancies, I think the teachers in their own statement listed them. I'm not sure if I should go over it. The statement, I think, was from a GES position. They talk about some teachers were paid on ranks they were not on. Some teachers had no personal records on the payroll between 2012 to 2014. Some teachers were not owed any arrears yet were credited with huge amounts of money. Some teachers were employed as pupil teachers but were paid as senior superintendents. Some female teachers were to be paid night watchman allowances. Their view is that Controller and Accountant General, which is a professional body, had done a professional work, and that is what they want to rely on. The GS, this breakdown I just gave you, they tell us that March 2017, they validated 63,212 and paid 61,612. March 2018, they validated 13,177 and paid 12,016. August 2018, they validated 13,928 and paid 13,928 all. Then November 2019, 1,847. They approved for payment in December 2019, 1,200. So in all, their view is that 92,164 have been validated and 88,756 paid. Now, these are figures. I hear the teachers respond, sometimes dispute some of these figures. That is why, in my view, look, Wednesday, I went to the extreme of saying that perhaps full disclosure and transparency will help all of us when we come to this discussion so that we have an informed basis. Total figures and payments and names should be put out in the public domain. That is, if they are not going to go to negotiate on the NLC platform. If it's within the context of the NLC, there's no need for this publication that I'm calling for. It's all of them are matured. There is a need for them to be committed to the process and deal with the issues and sort out the discrepancies there. But
the law actually requires confidentiality if they do it in that process.
I saw it here. Yes, I've seen it. And that is why I'm saying that I went to the extreme earlier. And that was because I thought the NLC platform had collapsed. And the public cannot be waiting.
Okay.
And we cannot stay uninformed. And our children, including their own children, are in a fix.
What sort of problem is this that remains unresolved since 2012?
I think it goes beyond 2012. Teachers' difficulties, the institutional,
if it goes beyond 2012, then that's such a huge indictment on the education ministry and service.
That is why I have some sympathy for the teachers as well. I mean, we are better, a nation, but we should be better in dealing with some of these things that are so perennial.
So if they create the problems, they shouldn't be complaining.
Who should be? They shouldn't be
those complaining.
Well, I've actually had a chance to criticize some of those who are in charge and the kind of language and communication they are doing. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. You don't go out threatening, I'm going to employ new people. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't even help labor relations, the way you have to constructively engage. Don't come in and talk about NDC or another political party engineering the teachers. It doesn't make sense. It's unsustainable. Those things, those are distortions. Those are pollutions that do not help.
Okay.
So I've had cause to take on those people. But beyond that, you focus on the substance.
All right.
Because we want a solution.
Okay. So before I come to the other teacher here, I'll bring the other teacher here to also share his experience. But I want to have, you know, because Coco has referred a lot to the Labor Act, and because you are the lawyer here, you can. Well, he's got the laws.
I know.
With him.
I know.
Okay, so you wanted to make this point. Make it quickly, and let's have Dennis also respond.
It is not the case that whatever controller put out there, we are saying that must be paid. That's not our position.
What's your position?
Our position is that if controller has, you see, this thing has gone through certain process. Ghana Audit Service did the validation. They gave the list to Ministry of Finance. Finance forwarded it to controller for them to do the payment, work out the fees. So they did that and then submitted it to GS for their review, which we believe it's a normal process, right? So if you've done the review and we have observed that there are anomalies, all that we are saying is that please segregate the anomalies on one side and pay those, like Koku is saying, according to them, they have 1,200, which they have cleared for payment. So pay that one. Why should you delay up to this point?
19th. That's
They gave them. They gave them the data.
Are you aware that that's their plan? That in December 19, on December 19, they would have paid this.
See, I'm saying that we have had a roadmap. We have had a roadmap, and this legacy arrest should have been paid in November, and that is why controller gave them the data on the 9th of November. So we were expecting it to be paid middle of November. So they have delayed the process. You see, and I think that I was not here, but somewhere when they my information is that the minister put out there that they don't owe teachers any arrest at Prempeh College 70th anniversary. I'm sure it was that and which actually infuriated the teachers, because if they come out with such a statement and then we don't react to it, then it means that the status quo remains.
You confirm that statement?
In fact, I was out of country at that time, so I don't know whether they did that. In fact, when they even declared the strike, I was out
but
of the
it'd be very terrible if they didn't have
I'm told from official sources that there are some arrears from 2018 to now, which are not the same as the legacy arrears.
Yes,
this was because they were being
batch of
migrated from the what they call integrated personnel and payroll to the human resources thing. So there are arrests there, but there's a last one I want him to clarify, because he made a point that they haven't said
they should pay on the controllers.
But this is the statement they issued, if I can refer to it. It said the subject for discussion, that's at the meeting with the labor ministry. The subject for discussion was the legacy arrears, which spanned the period 2012 to 2016. Primarily, we, the unions, were concerned with the payment of the said arrears, because our checks had revealed that the arrears had been verified and approved for payment by the Controller and Accountant General's internal audit unit about 3 weeks earlier. However, we were informed that when the verified data was handed over to the GS for review and action, the GS would not budge because it claimed some discrepancies had been discovered with some of the payments already effected. And I read those discrepancies earlier. Last point, please. It's very important. We, the unions, disagreed vehemently with the above reasons, since we believe the inputs had been done by a professional entity for the resultant payments to be effected and had been sanctioned by the Controller and Controller and Accountant General's own internal audit unit. So they were clear.
You're right. Okay, so Dennis, what do you say?
Well, Samson, first of all, you could, if you decide to go into substance of this issue, it's basically a systemic mistrust on the part of the employer and the employee, thereby leading to industrial dispute. And over the time, and they don't trust each other. You said this to me you did not fulfill your promise, and sadly, but in truth, the only way sometimes to resolve some of these issues is to come to the town, be a town crier, and cry to the people of Ghana. And based on the political pressure and social media, you get the requisite personalities making statements and making commitment with the media, sometimes hold them accountable, and they get the solution. Although that is not the lawful ways of resolving the issue, unfortunately, the unlawful ways have always gotten the solution that they so desire. And so you have an instance.
You said that is not the lawful way. It might not be the appropriate way at a time, yes, but it is not unlawful.
No, it's unlawful to the extent that in terms of the mode of commencement of declaring strike in this country, many a times, from doctors to almost all the employees, most of times they go about it by announcing it in the media and they embark on it. Sometimes, the last time JUSAC did the same, they didn't follow the procedure. It has happened to teachers, doctors do it. So I'm saying that most of the times they use unlawful procedure and end up getting the results that they so desire. Okay. Secondly, apart from the mistrust between the employer and the employee, there is also a similar mistrust between the dispute resolution body and the employees. But some of us do know that Labour Commission is employee friendly. Some of us based on our experience.
No, however, but some have their deep-seated mistrust.
I know.
Particularly when you have a commission,
yes,
whose leadership has to change because there's a change in political power and all of this. So they have their own suspicions about them.
I was about to add that when it comes to private companies, in terms of practice, we realize that they are more, towards listening to the employee.
Right.
But when it comes to government, it appears that they are side with the side of the employer. And so there is also a similar mistrust. And that's why it's quite unfortunate for him to issue a statement that if you don't respect us, we don't respect you. It should never be sent and it should never be encouraged, because whether we like it or not, we need to respect these institutions. The institution might have its own challenges, but we'll see how best we can resolve it and deal with it. So I think on the face of it, they do concede that in terms of the legalities, they missed. I think they cannot dispute those facts. And
I'm not sure they have conceded that.
They have conceded. You need not. I'm saying, if you throw the facts as you have, if you look at the so-called letter of 12 September 2019 and how the issue that resulted in it, if you look at the objective standard that has been set by the law, they themselves do concede. And it's no surprising that they say that, oh, we have, at first when it came out, the posturing was that we have not heard of these orders, but later on, I think on the advice of their lawyers, they decided to rescind the decision not to go on strike. But secondly, something.
No, but if you have gone to obtain an order,
yes,
on their blind,
yes,
side without them,
yes,
and then you go on the media to say I've obtained an order.
Yes.
Of course, you're a lawyer, you will not advise your client to obey on the basis of a media publication. You would rather wait, because the law requires that you should serve it on them. They should see it first. So if you obtain an order in the afternoon, yes, and you are on the media and they say we haven't seen it,
yes,
and so we are not ready to say we are going to abide by anything. They haven't done anything wrong.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'm talking about the publication they made thereafter. They actually issued a statement rescinding their decision to go back to the classroom based on the court order that they have seen, which I've seen it. So I'm saying that if you looked at the objective test, they would have missed. Okay. However, let's deal with the real issue, because you see, in all of this discussion, it's the students who are suffering. Now, we live in a country in which we have used education to divide this country in terms of how you progress. So the best public schools, the best basic schools, sadly but real, are private schools. And these private schools contest with public schools to enter the best second cycle schools. The best second cycle schools over the years are public schools. So you have people within the private sector acting more in the public schools. Right. And the university statistics reveal over the past 20 to something years is the same top 20 schools that get the entry to the universities. And so you have a situation, if the teachers go on strike at the basic level, the people who are affected most are the poor. The people who decide to enroll their kids into the public institute. So in all of this, some of us are of the position that the mistrust has come out. Let's see how best we can resolve the issue. If the issue relates to the legacy, I've seen the government has thrown out some numbers. Is it possible that the Teacher Association can also come out with their numbers so that we can compare and contrast? Because you see that it has been a general statement that has been made, but I'm yet to see the specifics on a part of the numbers that has come from the teacher associations. And most importantly, we also think that some of us think that the communication has not been helpful. You could see that some of them have the government sometimes, some spokesperson from the part of the government have taken a very hostile stance towards the teachers. Some of the teachers have also taken a very hostile stance on how they react. So it doesn't solve the problem. So as Kwaku rightly pointed out, the law has to be respected. We have to act within the regime. And I think that if they decide to put their case across, despite the fact that they don't trust the system, sadly, in terms of our legal regime, we need to see how best we can strengthen the system. You might not like the court, there's a perceived corruption, but that's the only way we can fix the system. Okay. So I will urge the teacher associations to go back to the certain table and go in accordance with the law. And I believe strongly that they can still get their points across in going to the context of the law. And most importantly, let's see the numbers, let's see how best we can judge. And the mistrust, let's see how best we can work on the mistrust. And it would be great to have the Minister for Education sitting next to the teacher associations and making a public statement to the whole nation saying that, you know what, we are listening to the issues, we are going back and having a sitting table, and we'll come up with a release jointly by both parties so as to resolve it.
Yes, so I suppose that lecturers don't have any, your problems sometimes are not peculiar, almost the same. And you also have to hit the road and things. But in my introduction, you heard me refer to the Human Capital Index, you know, by the World Bank. We started this year, because that was released in November 2018. We started this year on the basis that our education system was poor, according to their verdict. And I think it is not in dispute. It's not been disputed. We were ranking 116th on a table of 157, is it? Then teachers were identified as being absent and idling. Therefore, as much or many as half of the students in school were not getting taught. These are the teachers who are demanding perfection in the payment of their salaries and things. Do they have the moral right?
Yeah, thank you, Samson. It's very unfortunate that we are seeing these things playing out in the public. One would have thought that looking at the effort by government to restructure basic education and then move it up to the highest level, one would have thought that this would not come up. But of course, we are dealing with human beings, so sometimes these things come up. My worry is that when you look at the statistics by the Human Capital Index, it gives a very damning picture about education, and want to see how best we can address this quickly. So you realize that, yes, much as you want to support the effort of teachers to be able to deliver the public good, you also want teachers also to play the game according to the rules that govern the whole process. So it brings us into a very difficult situation. Now look at all that the teachers are saying. There's one thing which is very clear, that there is a sort of, problem with their relationship, employer-employee relationship. There's a big problem that it's not today. Over the years, the state and the stakeholders have not been able to address this head-on, and it lingers on from regime to regime. Unfortunately, in politics, once you lose power, you inherit all the good things, including bad things. So it becomes albatross around the neck of, regimes, and they find it difficult to handle. If you look at the other variables, such as figures, we are talking about figures that monies that are supposed to be paid to them. You realize that there are difficulties in how to reconcile these things. I believe that the two stakeholders, I'm talking about employers and employees, they all have something that is important for us to consider. But I would urge the teachers that if you want your case to be listened to by people, you need to be able to walk through that tight rope of legal regime so that everybody will appreciate what you're doing. I was surprised that if you look at the Labor Commission Act, it gives you an idea that once you are doing negotiation and you hit a snag, you need to be able to inform the Labor Commission. You wrote, they did not respond. And the lawyers will help us here that what happens when it happens like that. But from a layman perspective, I believe that there are other ways that you could have dealt with this situation without necessarily now going to the public and all that. Of course, that's a place you have sympathy. But remember, they are not the people who employ you. So they will not be able to take concrete decisions. We also want to look at the plight of the teachers. Uncle Kweku and earlier speakers have made great points about this issue. And you realize that it's becoming one too many. Just simple biometric system, walk people through, let them be able to handle this issue in no time so that people can be paid what is due them. It's taking them forever to do that. Yeah, in certain places, 2 years, people are on the job without salary. And this is unfair.
Some have done more than that.
Yes. Some people even get to pension and they still have their back pays not paid to them. That's unfair. If we tie it to what something you did say earlier on, that we need to look at this index, then you realize that the quality, if you have this type of non-charlatan attitude towards addressing educational problem like that, you should not expect any product that is worth considering. And for me, that's where the worry is. So going forward, I believe that government should be able to handle this situation very well. And then teachers also should not also be in a haste to go out there and serve notice and do all that. Once you know,
they have become familiar that that's the only way they get results.
But
the language that is understood by
yes, sadly. But at the end of the day, you realize that will not help unless you sit down. You go by what the Labor Commission is saying. Sit down with the employer, talk, and if you reach a dead end, there is always an opportunity for you to move on.
Just to point it out, under the Labor Act, it allows for a voluntary arbitration in case when they go through this process. It even gives a cooling off period because this cooling off period is for quote and unquote is to cool off the heads, sit down, and let's see how best we can negotiate. And no matter how there is trust of the commission, whether we like it, and I'm an officer of the law, I think that we need to still, go and use the institution. If you disagree with the position of the Labour Commission, there are several remedies that you can take. There are instances where the Labour Commission has lost on case that was taken. Nothing also prevents, and one of the I want to point out, nothing prevents the employee from taking the employer to court to go and say to the court that you need an order to compel the employer to pay its money to him. That's something that we always lose sight of.
They know that these are employers that even when you get compelling orders, it takes another whole, different game to get them to comply.
I disagree on that fact because we as lawyers know for a fact that it depends on the mode with which you enforce your orders. If at the end of the day, the court makes an order, union, because they have a right to form the union takes a case to court on behalf of its members, to the Labour Court. And these are facts that at the end of the day can even get summary judgment on, because if they present their facts to show that these are my employees, they have not been paid for this period. Because remember that under the Labour Act, the employer is under obligation to provide a letter of employment. He has an obligation to provide remuneration. And you could see from the discussion that at least the employer admits there is some monies to be paid. There's no dispute about that. That also gives them the right, as a course of action, to be able to go to court. That's a lawful way of making sure that its contractual obligations are upheld. But we should not encourage them to go by the unlawful way.
I see. So
I want to.
Okay, finish up. I'll come and finish up with you.
So if you look at the situation, you realize that the two actors should not be in a haste. Once you have that goodwill from government, it doesn't matter whether you don't believe that the government will do the needful. Please just exercise restraint, because you can also be caught under the law that you'll be taken to court. That yes, the strike is illegal, and once the strike is illegal, people can sue you. That I expect my child to go through exam at this time and all that, they can sue you. So I believe that much as we want to fight for our interests, we should also make sure that the law, which is a useful instrument that regulates our conduct, will also work so that it creates that harmonious environment for all of us to operate.
So, you see, before you speak to the matters that I think we should be progressing from, where are we today?
So we are back in the classrooms.
You are back in the classroom because you have been compelled by an order of the court at least for 10 days.
Yes.
My question about where we are today is not about the fact that you are back in the classroom. We know that. When are you getting your monies, or you have gotten them?
We've not gotten the money. You see, Samson, you see, I appreciate all the comments that the other panelists have made. I appreciate them. You see, the point really is that the employer who is supposed to have even prepared that data to enable controller to pay us couldn't even do that way. You see, at that time, they did not even trust the employer to do that kind of job. That is why they brought in the Ghana Audit Service. So Ghana Audit Service did the work, provided the list to Ministry of Finance. Finance forwarded it to Controller. Controller finished its work on the 9th of November. Gave it to GS for you to review. That if it were salary to be paid, would they have delayed the process up to this point? So you see, the commitment of the employer to let the people have their salaries is in doubt. And that is where we are tackling the issue. As for all the other things that the other panels, I appreciate them. There's no two ways about that. That we ourselves didn't do the right things at some point in time. But that does not take away the fact that people have worked over 2 years and you must pay them.
When you say you didn't do some of the right things at a certain point,
like not going by the Labor Act and then all the other things.
So Kwaku is right that you actually admit.
Is right, yes.
You admit that
Kwaku is right.
It's an illegal strike.
Kwaku is right. But in this country, we use a legal strike to get things done.
No, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
Samson, don't let us think that.
But when we sit,
Dennis, wait. You're saying that you use illegal strike to get things done. So you would do a strike illegally.
You see,
you are teachers. You are teaching the children.
It's a lesson. We are teaching the children that, but that is not what we are teaching. That indeed, government itself think that if you go on strike, they can even meet you and then resolve your problem for you.
I see.
Really?
I'm telling you.
So government sits anticipating and expecting that you will take a strike before they resolve your issue.
Otherwise, why should they?
Don't get the logic of that.
You don't get it.
I don't get the logic of that.
Look, I'm saying that this thing happened in 2016. When you said we were going on strike, they sat us down.
So let's try and finish up. Let's try and finish up. Question now is, you are back at least for 10 days. I don't know, maybe we should start this way. What are your instructions to your lawyers? You say they should go and get to the documents from the court so that you get to know. Do you have an intention to go to the court and vacate this? Because you can go and vacate what they have put against you. Or on the 10th day or by the 9th day, they would have repeated that application and then it will come to you on notice, this time not on your blind side. So you go to the court and defend that you haven't done a wrong thing and that they should remove the injunction. Or what are you doing?
Yeah, we will definitely instruct our lawyers to put in their defense. So that one, we will take it from there. I understand.
Yes, but beyond being compelled, you mean you're still at a standstill as regards your arrears?
Yeah, because they have not paid. If they pay their arrears, trust me, we will go back to the classroom and do what is needed.
You're already in the classroom.
We are already there, yes. But we are trusting that the 10 days will also cover the period that they themselves have earmarked for the payment. Okay. So we are waiting for it. If 19th December we get these monies paid, all well and good.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
At least we have achieved our objective.
They've not called you, and you don't expect a call because there is a roadmap from 19th when you should be paid the last batch.
No, if they call us, we will definitely attend those meetings and then do.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
The figure I see
relative to the 19 is 1,200. And he's talking of 30,000.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a discrepancy.
So by 19th, you're talking about only 1,200
That's
people.
what officially
that is what
listed.
they say they have, a controller gave it to them.
So you want that to be paid?
We want that to be paid.
Not 30,000 people?
No, but it's a process, right? It's a process. So as and when Minister of Finance forwards the list to them, I'm sure possibly they are also doing this based on their figures or money.
So why didn't you wait for the 1,200 people to get to December 19 and hold the entire system to ransom?
You see, Samson.
If you are ready to take for just 1,000 in respect of 30,000, then you didn't need to go on this strike.
Samson. You see, as at the time that we were talking about these issues, they had not put out any figure. It's only when the strike action came in that they said the list that the controller gave them was 1,847 or so, and that according to them, it is only 1,200 which has been approved for payment. You see, as far as I'm concerned, these figures, you have to even interrogate them.
Yeah,
like what you
said.
said.
I agree.
You see, we have to interrogate them.
All right, but you didn't answer me. What are you doing about, you know, this human capital index? That's so terrible, and such an indictment on your work, as teachers. What do you say about it?
It's unfortunate that this thing is playing out. But in a country where
about 56% of Ghana's human capital will go waste in the next 18 years because of the poor quality of the country's education system. Okay? And then they indicted the teachers. Absenteeism.
It's only the teachers that they indicted.
Absenteeism and idleness.
But in the situation where you have to leave the classroom and go chase these things, what results are you expecting, Samson?
You think this is justified? That about half of the children who are in school are not being taught because of teacher absenteeism and idleness on the part of teachers during productive hours.
What's the cause of the absenteeism?
What's the
cause of the idleness?
It's because you have not been paid your arrears.
It's not, we are not talking about being paid. It's salaries that has not been paid. It's salaries that has not been paid.
Salary arrears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Complete salary for 24 months.
Sure.
So it's not that they have paid the salaries and some arrears on top which have not been paid. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Salaries
for 24 months remains unpaid. We have to
just a quick one. What the Labour Commission did in terms of seeking to go and enforce its orders that it had already issued to the associations, and I'm told that the return date for that is happy to be on the 19th. So it's basically to say that I issued an order pursuant to my powers under Section 172 that call off the illegal strike in accordance with the law and come back to the Labour Commission. That was ignored, and that's how they went to court to enforce this order.
Yeah, but you and I know that they went on their blind side. Ex parte, anything could have happened. So if they have the opportunity next time to be in court,
I'm talking about
they may also make an argument that the
judge
will take a different view.
Agree, but I'm talking about the substantive matter. The substantive matter is about enforcement, which is returnable next week, but which has to be dealt with.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We take a break here, and when we return, we ask why you don't want to vote in the elections. Why you don't want us to do a one-touch? Because when we do, twice, that's a lot of cost to this country. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And I'll share some of your views right away, and then we'll move to the next subjects that we have to discuss. Abbas Muhammad says, this teacher's arrears is really breeding corruption at the Controller and Accountant General. I was personally called to make an advance payment. Afterwards, the next month, my salary was paid in full. So these are the stories that I was trying to share with you earlier. And this also supposed to be a teacher. Seidu says that, Seidu Manduhu says that I was employed by GES in 2014. I was upgraded in 2015. I got only 3 months of the salary arrears owed me. I have failed arrear forms on countless occasions. I have been to Fair Wages and Salaries Commission in Accra. The attempt to get my salaries has proved futile. However, I had a connection man who was ready to work it out for me on condition that I will divide the amounts 50-50. I declined to this proposal. I'm hoping that the arrears will be paid as is being promised. It has been 4 years. Why? What's my crime? And there is this other teacher who has gotten in touch with Newsfile consistently for almost 3 years now when these issues come up to be discussed. Florence Ansong, and she says, Samson, I wonder if my name is captured at all. I tuned in late, but this is what I can say. Government owes me 4 years salary arrears from 2012 to 2016. So that's how crazy the situation really is. And these people are supposed to be working for the state, right? Okay. And we expect that we'll have a society that doesn't encourage corruption and corrupt conduct. Okay. Right, so let's move to the next issue that we have to discuss, and we want to say thank you very much to Kwamina Ahenkwa Kwashi, who is head of Salaries and Working Conditions Department of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. He has taken leave of us, and now joining us is Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD Ghana. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you and good morning.
Okay, right. So my other guests, as you know, are Dennis Ajay Jumo. He's a lawyer. Dr. Kwame Asa Asante, Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. And of course, the usual suspects, Abdul Malik Kubako. So we start with you. How should we interpret your findings to start with? We'll discuss that and dovetail it into the brouhaha about the new register that the EC is seeking to do, that the NDC and other parties are kicking against. Some are saying it should be aborted because this is another useless waste of resources. We should be focusing on the Ghana card and make it integrated so we can avoid this situation of every year or every election year wanting to make a new register. So how should we interpret it? And it's very worrying that 4 in 10 Ghanaians, are not taking sides. And by your findings, you said when asked which party's candidates people will vote for if presidential elections were held the following day, more than 4 in 10 Ghanaians, that's 42%, said they would not vote. For me, that's the biggest issue.
So let me correct that statistic. I think it's in the way the statement was crafted. But if you look at the preceding statement, it talks about people not declaring a position. So the breakdown goes to, I think 11% say they will not vote at all. 19% said they will not reveal who they would vote for.
Okay.
And 12%.
In your key findings, you had. Okay.
So that's 11%.
So it's rather the 11% who said they will not vote at all.
Yes.
Okay.
12% said they are undecided. All right. And then 19% said, I wouldn't tell you. who I'll vote for. So they did not indicate a preference. But even the 11% is the highest we've had for a while. And so I think for me, there are two narratives that you can try to interrogate. One has to do with the incumbent, so the two main parties going into an election. And then the other one is basically more of a commentary of where our democracy is currently in terms of voter behavior, voter attitudes to multi-party democracy, and so on and so forth. I think we just run through the whole referendum debate, and one of the sort of driving factors for people who say they wouldn't want partisanship at local level was a certain fatigue with multi-party politics, which they feel has not delivered development, and therefore they felt that more of it was not something that would advance the course of development.
Your finding was that the proportion of Ghanaians who said they would not vote and who did not declare a voting intention is the highest recorded in Afrobarometer surveys going back to 2008.
That's right. And it's a big category. If you put those three categories together, I think the highest we've had in the past was about 27%. So if you put this together, that's 42. Even though, I mean, I have to have a note of caution here. When somebody says, I wouldn't tell you, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't necessarily have a preference.
Right.
Maybe at that point in time, they don't trust you, they don't want to, it's a secret vote, they don't want to tell you, and so on.
Culturally,
they
are to saying it.
Exactly. So there's always a percentage, and if you look over the years of Afrobarometer, there's always a percentage that will tell you they will not disclose. And so when you're looking at the numbers for MPP or NDC, you always have to remember that there's still a pot of voters who are yet to indicate one way or the other. And so the parties have to then figure out, and then that you have to do breakdowns and see what demographics is saying this. Are they the people who are likely to vote for me or not in the past? But the 11% is troubling. And even if you just do anecdotal, your family members or your friends, this is probably the first time that you hear people saying, oh, what's the point? I'm not planning to go and vote come the election. And actually, one of the categories where you hear a lot of this are young women who indicate this action. So what exactly is going on? For me, what is going on with our citizens and their attitudes to multi-party democratic elections and elections and participating elections? Are they feeling, disappointed that, well, they don't really, the politicians might come and say this, they don't really deliver. We have two-party system. If I don't like any of the parties, I don't really have a choice. And so what's the point? Maybe they will all deliver the same thing. So these are worrying trends, because why? If you look at what has happened in the Western world, the fallback from globalization and so on in the US and in the UK, you end up with Trump. So when you get to a point where people, and of course people have their own views about Trump, but the anti-establishment type of candidate, or the candidate who appears to be, might appeal to a future that you are not clear about, but you end up with something that you really did not plan for. And if we don't find ways to address these issues, you open a system for that. And it's happening all out. It's not even just in Ghana. It's happening on the African continent in many places, where particularly because the demographic is also very youthful. And they don't have the same kind of restraint, the same kind of patience to wait and hold on. So if at some point you get dissolution and you think somebody comes up and he sounds great, he seems to be speaking the language and all of that stuff, before you know, you have a different kind of political arrangement or a different kind of leader that
this is September, October that you are speaking to the people. Yeah. Supposing that this is our reality, and I want to believe, just as when we're talking about the corruption survey results, that almost everybody on this table said that's really the reality, that we can say the same of this result. We have 1 year, or if you like, some 11 months to go to the elections. There can be a dramatic change in this. What will bring about that change?
What I'm talking about in terms of a Trumpian movement, I don't think you'll get it in 2020. So that's why I separated the issue. That for us, we see a trend in terms of Ghanaian general attitudes to multipartyism and democracy and development, which has to be resolved. Because then you open up the political system to things that you can't really, you don't know. It's an unknown. But in terms of going into the 2020 election, as enough and note that the Afrobarometer is not a poll, it's a survey.
Right.
And the interesting thing about it is that it really gives you a lot of information as to what might be driving these attitudes on this particular question. You have economic evaluations, you have social evaluations. So if you're a political party, you have enough data for you to know, why are young people more likely to rate me this way or
what
that way.
What to do, how to couch your message going
forward. There's a lot of information that you have that for you to make a decision as to how should I even have my campaign so that I can respond to.
But it's a genuine concern that you might not get as voting once.
Yes.
And that's
exactly because if people stay away. But the cost might be even just in monetary terms, but there's a much more serious cost in terms of people basically withdrawing from the political system. And if the citizens don't have confidence, then even the legitimacy of who you elect becomes a problem. Anybody that is thrown into that kind of situation, your ability to govern
and the heightened tensions
is absolutely limited
when you're going into second round.
Yeah. So even when if you go through that and you become a government, having the public support to be able to deliver your agenda becomes a problem.
Okay.
So that I think for me, is good. It's a year before election. It offers all of us good opportunity. But I want to think that even beyond 2020, we have to think seriously about how we make our politics deliver development.
Okay. And like the CDD continues to use the expression that democracy is not delivering the dividends to the people. Now, the bit about the Electoral Commission, taking a decision that only biometrically registered electorates will vote in 2020, and these parties that are saying that you can't be bringing this up at this time, the NDC, supported by the PNC, and we are told the United Front Party, the EGIL Party, and the All People's Congress. We have all sorts of parties in the books. Yeah.
Yes, so I know this particular matter has been discussed for quite a long time. I mean, it's not a current issue. When the Electoral Commission sort of came in, the new leadership, because they did an evaluation of the STL arrangements and so on and so forth. So I think even as at the early part of this year or so, there was an intention that they wanted to do a new register. The current problem is that at the last IPAC meeting, where they were presented with the rationale, why they wanted to do the technical things that they have done and so on, there was a request from the parties to see a report so that they can also satisfy themselves that there's really a need to do this. I understand that did not happen, and then the next letter was for them to come and see the suppliers, proposed suppliers, who were going to deliver this particular technology, to evaluate them and so on and so forth. So I think there was a sense that they did not get an opportunity to really input into the process. Actually, if you look at the timetable, we are really in a very difficult fix. If we're going to do a new register, basically by January, we should be ready to go, because as you know, the registration process, exhibition, and so on, and then you have to then move on to nomination and so on. If you are not doing this by first quarter or into May, June, then you are in trouble. So if you're going to use a new system, you have at most 5 months to be able to deliver it, which include testing it, piloting it, all of those kinds of issues have to come in. So I feel that the Electoral Commission is in a fix. And because you also have DLE to deliver, you probably have not been managed to focus on that, at the same time. Well, you have to
wait. DLE is District Assembly elections.
District Assembly elections. So so I think they have a timetable. They are trying to move quickly, but the voter registration process is so important, particularly if you are introducing a new technology that might have facial recognition and all kinds of other features. So I think IPAC still is the avenue for these kinds.
But what do you think what does your gut tell you and the experience says that 11 months to register 11 million voters, is that practicable, and to roll it out and use that process for the elections in 2020?
I wouldn't, for a question like that, I would definitely not rely on my gut. I would like to rely on some real technical information to know that it is feasible. We dispatch one of our IT people to try to sit in to, understand what is going to happen. But I think that whatever it is, it appears that the system that they have, the old system, was giving them massive problems. Even with the limited registration exercise, they had huge problems with some of the data records going missing and all kinds of things. So it looks like if you need to do a new system, but within the time frame, can it be done? I have to see the technical information to be able to say.
What's your IT people telling you?
Well, I mean, so this were basically to understand what the people were offering, both the hardware and the software. But whether or not in terms of, I think they were giving, both of them were giving 5 months to deliver, at least on the hardware.
All right.
You have to integrate hardware with software, all of those issues. I mean,
Kuku, if you don't mind, can we start from the bottom to the Afrobarometer? Well, is it not too late? Your colleague Benefsin, who's an expert in this area, says that it's too short a time. The Electoral Commission should have bought this plan.
Well, when it comes to these things, he's more competent than I am. I mean, I hardly have any basis of challenging somebody like Benefsin relative to these things. But of course, I can express my own views.
Sure.
See, my understanding is that we're dealing with two things now. The need for a new, that is what the EC is putting forward, a new biometric, voter management system that is distinct from a new voters register, even though they are interrelated.
Are you able to explain that?
Yeah, they're talking of the equipment, the biometric equipment. What they have now is being obsolete. They use the word obsolete. I've seen a report that tries to justify it. Yesterday or so, I double-checked whether this report, which is a EC document, has been supplied to the political parties. Apparently, no. That could be part of the
This report is dated when?
This is 12 December 2019.
Okay.
12 December.
So at the time that they were meeting, it wasn't ready?
Well, I asked.
IPAC, they gave them a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
But they wanted
all right,
the whatever.
I think this report should be made available to all the political stakeholders, not just the parties, but all this, because in these things they bring in all sorts of groups, even sometimes the donor community and things, and the CDD and all the rest go there. So this must be the basis for discussion, a serious interrogation of the issue. Do we indeed need a new biometric management system? From what I know, I think we do, because the old one is obsolete. And as Kojo was saying, even in terms of the limited registration, they have challenges. the online registration.
Right,
they have serious challenges. The referendum that we had, there were also challenges. It's obvious. We don't have time. I would have read some of the points they made, but there appears to be some need for a new technology because the old one is outdated. Let the parties sit down together with other experts and interrogate this issue. Beyond that, the question will be whether this new system should be the basis to do a fresh register. I'm inclined to think if the two came together, it would be more acceptable. I'm inclined to think that there's the need for consistency. A new biometric voter management system should come along with a new voters register. Time frame then becomes the issue. Technically, I'm unable to answer that question, but I think we have many technically competent people who can resolve that matter. So before people like us can be invited to come in.
The concerns that they expressed, the NDC, including that they went to this meeting and the NPP was represented by, the Director General of the National Communications, Authority, and they don't understand that. Is that a point to make?
Look, it's not a substantive point. If I were the is it Anoche? Yes. If I were him, I would not have gone to.
I was wondering.
Yes. He's a party member, of course. That doesn't disqualify him from being appointed as chief executive of NCA. But if I were him or the party, I would not have asked him to represent the party. That's my own personal. But it doesn't violate anything.
I think that the party believes or feels that this is our best hand when it comes to technology. And we know how he was credited with the NPP's ability to, collate the results in record time, and make them known
but I think
in the 2016 elections.
I think the concern was that, and that's why I didn't attend the software demonstration, but the concern was that the system included using the telcos.
Right.
And because he was a regulator
of the telcos,
of the telcos, a system that they manage, if you are bringing the person to sitting for a party that was also competing, I think just on the face of it, as you were saying, the person didn't need to go there.
The fear that
the person
his organization could compromise the system in favor of his party.
Exactly. I mean,
listen. It doesn't have to take his presence, physical presence at a committee meeting, for him to do what you call the influence. If indeed there is any such thing. That's why I say it's not substantive for me. But if I were, I won't provide the basis for somebody to peddle suspicions.
Yes. But you seem to agree that it's problematic that he's the one representing the party there.
Not that I agree. I said if I were in the party, I would have said, look, don't give anybody ammo to peddle suspicions. Suspicions that perhaps have no foundation. But it's the nature of our politics. You provide that ammo, then people run with it, and they distorted the environment, polluted. And
we are speaking about the EC's also independence over time, and it has had to go to the court, and the court has to pronounce on it for Ari, Dr. Papakwesi Indom's, suits. Sometime last, is it 2012? Yeah.
No.
2016.
But you see, something, this was a demonstration, wasn't it?
They seem to suggest that this was a surprise. They didn't know anything about it, and the EC was not being, collaborative, was not, informing them ahead of time, even seeking their views before introducing things.
No, that I'm not sure the records show so. This letter I'm holding here was sent to all the parties, 25th November 2019, at an IPAC meeting. It's titled Emergency Inter-Party Advisory Committee. And I read a relevant paragraph. As a follow-up to discussions held at the emergency IPAC meeting on November 25th, 2019, the Electoral Commission will organize a meeting with political parties to further discuss the procurement of a new biometric tool set for elections in Ghana. Okay, date was 2nd December 2019, 3 p.m., IPAC room. Then there is this 4th December one. It says, as a follow-up to our discussions on the procurement of a biometric voter management solution for the Electoral Commission, you are kindly invited to a demonstration by a number of vendors shortlisted by the Electoral Commission. The demonstration will cover both the software and the hardware of the biometric voter management solution. This was the meeting that they boycotted. That was not exactly an IPAC meeting. It was a demonstration. For me, they could have sat in the demonstration, view it, then proceed subsequently to an IPAC meeting, especially if this report is given to them.
They seem to suggest that we must be part of the initiation decision.
Procurement.
You know,
the EC has
and
a
that
procurement.
the EC should not be seen to just be saying, yes, come and observe something we have done.
What is the procurement regulation relative to the EC? First of all, they have a procurement committee.
Right.
You know, the two major parties in Parliament is represented by the two parties because they are the only two there. It's even been so all the time when there were other parties. So in terms of procurement processes, I'm not sure anything has happened to lead to the cry of illegality or a violation. I don't think so. And at this stage, that is mere demonstration. Look, a big party like the NDC, it's been in government. It has capable people, both technically, politically, professionally. At this stage, I think the Iwoka was an overreaction.
Yeah, the contestation has been whether or not we should actually have a new system.
Yes.
So that has been the contestation.
Yes.
Okay. And so their problem with all these demonstrations that we feel that you know we don't have enough information.
Or you are being unilateral.
Exactly in your decision.
The question of unilateral, you know, decision making. And I suppose that is why, you know, long ago the NPP has suggested, as part of its recommendations for improving the system, that we should elevate IPAC into a legal instrument.
But they all met. If don't forget, this I think happened at that the committee was formed by the Farijan administration, but it continued during the Charlotte Osei administration. And I have their resolution here. All the parties signed on by the NDC and MPP said there was no need to give IPAC a legal status. It should remain as it is.
Because it can interfere with the EC's independence. Right?
Okay.
So you want to be careful about that. It's the same feeling I have about this.
So if they all agree in this manner, why is it that often, particularly when they are out of government,
that's what happens.
They seem to, you know, take a position that suggests that you are acting unilaterally, and that doesn't help us.
I think for me it's really an information gap. As I said, I really thought that even though a PowerPoint was done, they should have been given technical, because even based on the PowerPoint, there were very, very substantial issues they raised. So there's enough technical capacity on both sides to be able to assess whether or not this is true or the EC is exaggerating. And I think it's not too late to still make provision for that.
So like as you mentioned earlier, their bigger issue is that don't call us and tell us we want to do this. Are they not, you know, standing in the way of the EC's independence if they seek to suggest that the EC must, like, inform them from the start every little thing it has to do?
See, election management, yes, the law is very important, and an EC can always assert your independence. But at the end, you want a credible, peaceful outcome. That is the only thing that is going to, basically.
They are telling you that if we don't agree that there ought to be a new register, there shouldn't be one.
No, I mean, so it means it's even the personality of the leadership is important, because at the end, whatever technology you deploy is whether that voter understands what process is going on.
All right.
That is what is going to give legitimacy to the process. So you want the parties to be embracing of whatever system you are putting in place. Otherwise, they will go and misinform their people that, oh, there's this crazy thing going on. And
all right, Kuku. So let's proceed to Afrobarometer. And the fact that there is some despondency, people don't want to vote, and that we might not get one-touch voting, going forward. But before that, I think it's instructive to read this. Godwin Eduji Tameklo says that, my regards to the panel members. On the register, my learned friend, Senior Kojo, should know that the abrogation of the Superlock contract is what is creating the problem with data migration during the recent limited registration exercise. The offline registration without the existence of STL didn't help. The cost of new biometric register cannot be justified. Migration of the current data to the new system should be considered. It is cost effective. We have used this register for the referendum and the Ayawaso by-election. We are going to use it for the 17th December District Assembly elections. On what basis do we want to invalidate the current register?
I think
thank you.
Kwaku's point about
Kwaku,
the two
let's go to
Afrobarometer. To be honest with you, I got a copy of the survey only yesterday.
Okay.
And but before then, of course, media shots have been out there. So I would want to hold my fire on it. But I believe election year, with this fever, could, you know, change some of the dynamics. That's what I believe.
Okay.
But right now, I don't have much to say on it.
All right. Thank you very much. So, Dennis, the starting from that, you know, biometric, you know, system, almost all the time, the EC's independence comes under challenge from opposition party. The governing parties have always been comfortable with the EC. How should the EC proceed? Because it still needs these key stakeholders, particularly the NDC.
I think that based on history and also going through the case law and you know, the dictum of the courts to the EC, although the EC have the power in terms of to come up with a new register in terms of demarcation of constituency, among other factors, although the EC is also independent, however, it exercises a discretion, and the law has given how the discretion should be done in terms of it has to be fair, it has to be candid, you know, and as one key element that will ensure that the discretion is exercised critically is that the level of transparency. If there's always an element of suspicion amongst all these political, especially those in opposition, as to how the EC will go, you see the opposition NDC's party's position when Charlotte was removed and new coming in, and so the EC should have a posturing that seeks not to lead into the belief that they are seeking to do something untoward. Okay, so I would insist that there should be a high level of transparency in terms of going about these processes. As to what certain people, because of mischievous purpose, may say, they will still go about it because it may be inured to them politically. However, there should be an element of transparency how this whole SI is going to be, so that the Ghanaian public, who has given the EC the mandate to conduct election for and on our behalf, will always side with the EC. But when the EC's posturing might not be right, or when information is very scanty, it allows for the propaganda element to come in. So I'll give you Kojo and Kwaku that, you know, there has to be a higher element of transparency, which will seek to affirm the EC's independence. But being independent does not automatically mean that they can decide to be unilateral, although the power resides with them. But over the years, there has been, through IPAC, there have been an instance where they seek to engage. And it becomes more fundamental when the issue resolves around what you know, the Supreme Court have said in Abu Ramadan relating to the golden key that opens your political right, i.e., you know, compiling a new register, and the register happens to be the fundamental. Through the election petition, the court have said that election is won at the polling station. Who is entitled to vote is determined at the polling station, and so if you have the foundation which will determine whether or not you win, being brought into, you know, being brought up to it. So you have an instance where all the political parties, based on case law, based on the law, will be more particularly paying attention as who determines register, what goes into it. And so for where I sit, it is not strange that the opposition is opposing it. It happened with Let My Vote Count Alliance. It's not strange. But to give the EC a higher pedestal is the level of transparency. Giving the Ghanaians the needs assessment to let us know that it is not being done on any mischievous level. These are the real facts that relate to it. How best can we, and especially in situations where some of us, because we are IT inclined, if you compromise the security of your IT system, somebody can sit in Afghanistan. Remember that the US election was influenced by Russia, for which they are seeking to go all this. If you compromise your security systems, where the data of your elections is in the hands of a foreigner, where there are security breaches, these are things that, for me, even beyond elections, it gives me cause for worry, because data, in terms of our current dispensation, data is actually the gold or the oil of our current dispensation. So if the EC does the needs assessment and realize that there are serious cybersecurity issues, there are serious issues concerning our data, our fingerprint, our biometric data, because if somebody gets your biometric data, he can get your bank account, he can get all these things. So if the needs assessment, as has been brought to the EC, relates to the biometric, and some of us might be, quote and unquote, will not be willing to participate in elections, even if my biometric details can be taken away from me and can be used on towards. So I think that in all these exercises, we should, see how best we can push the transparency element. And something, if you allow me on the Afrobarometer issue that was raised, my major concern is not having a Trump as your president.
Because you were referring earlier to the Abu Ramadan, Evans Nemako against the Electoral Commission, and it's become my favorite, and when the judgment came, you and I discussed earlier. This is what Georgina Wood said, and
Fantastic
I repeat,
dictum,
I have read it like 2 times on this platform, but I keep asking myself, why can't we get this very simple logic? She said, she was presiding over that matter. She said that the need for a credible and reliable multi-purpose national identification system comprising the relevant data and communication infrastructure that would answer to most of our national needs, whether for electoral planning or developmental or other purposes, is greater than ever before. We think the time has come for the appropriate authorities to respond to this need. This is Georgina Wood speaking, to conclude that particular judgment.
Yeah.
We have how many, ID cards and, identification systems littered all over the place. Yeah. We have now begun a national ID, which is supposed to be this thing and answer this question. Why are we not seeking to perfect that? And all the time we want to spend money to do a new thing when it will not be used for too long.
So it's sad that we as a country allow these things to fester. I quite remember when they started the national identification and this form, Professor Teva was given that mandate, there was a stakeholder engagement where the Ministry of the Immigration, Passport Office, almost all these people met and they agreed that they have to pursue the national identification, for which reason, if we are able to undertake it, then we'll satisfy the prophecy of Georgina Wood as she then was before she left. Now, the problem you're having is that with the national identification in this country, we have not have a sustainable engagement in trying to have a follow-up on what is happening. Once the thing leaves Accra, quote and unquote, all of us as a country, sadly, forget about it till there's an issue that relates to it. And that's why that's why some of us have said on this show that Ghana gradually have developed an Accra mentality. If the thing is not in Accra, all of us are, go country. So I think that as part of the whole process, it's ongoing. How best can we get the political parties and everybody to rally around it so that we can ensure that they give us constant report as to what is happening. The only time national identification will come to this table is when there has been an issue relating to it. And that's the sad aspect of we not being proactive but being reactive. I know the exercise is ongoing. However, all of us have forgotten about it, waiting that something will happen and then we might come back. But I think that when the national identification is able to resolve, and the timelines are also very important. I know for a fact that there have been delays or systemic challenges. If they are able to achieve it at a point in time, they can easily relate with the EC for it to be addressed. Because almost all the people are being registered under national identification above the 18-year-old threshold. So it will be easier for us to get that data, and EC did not incur any further cost on it.
Okay.
Can I add, just before you go on the Afrobarometer, just 2 things. So the other thing we have to contend with is that there's a census that's going to be carried on, I think, the first 2 quarters of next year. And often the census becomes your reference point for compiling a register. So that's another thing. What the timeline for the census is what we have to do. On the ID side, it's just to remind everybody that no technology can help you deal with underage voting and foreigners, which is one of the big problems that we have, or dead people. So whatever technology you deploy, a lot of your bloating in the register has to do with some of these things.
But that's
so
why the law,
and that's why
the law provides for continuous registration.
Yes.
So you have a system already in place. Everybody is hooked on. If they want to vote, they just use for voting. And those who are coming up, you just do continuous registration for them.
But if you want to delete,
like
if you want to delete people who are dead, that's why the ID system. What I'm saying is that
people can be done only that we are not complying with the law. Before you bury everybody in this country, the law requires you to go for a barrier permit.
Yes, but you see, you need a system that makes it easy for the EC to have a list of death certificates and say, these people, I'm clearing them off. That is the ID system has to deal with that because that allows all these agencies to integrate births and deaths and so on and so forth. So you have a clean way of just cleaning the system. That is not going to be fixed by facial recognition and all of those things. So the sooner the ID system or process comes in, the better for us to get a much more credible register.
So finish on the
Afrobarometer. But my major concern, in terms of the political legitimacy and the concern of people, he was talking about we having a Trumpian moment. For some of us, that's democracy. If we decide as a country that at a point in time in our life we want somebody with the character and temperament of Trump or Boris Johnson to lead us, so be it, so long as it's done within the confines of the Constitution. My major worry, and it will dovetail into our further discussion, when there is this general lack of interest in the democracy, which allows certain people to overthrow the government and then say that the people are not interested, and one day somebody says that based on the Afrobarometer report, it clearly demonstrates that the people have lost hope in the system, and on that basis, it justifies us overthrowing the Constitution to restore the new order. That for me is a major worry, and I think that is where we need to have the discussion. As in getting a Trump or getting quote-unquote anybody that you think might not satisfy in terms of your objective standard, it's not an issue. But the bigger issue is...
for me, but I understand your point. Because maybe I have a certain value system or whatever.
I know, but it's even happening now, where you look at a certain MP, you think that, this MP should not be your candidate, but he is actually your candidate.
Yes, because that's a democracy.
That's a democracy that we are having. But the major concern is where people use as a legitimacy to overthrow the system. The other point I want to make is that in terms of determining who becomes the president of the country, is determined by the total number of valid vote cast. So even if 42% of Ghanaians say, quote unquote, we are not going to vote,
or we are not decided,
we have not decided, or we are not interested, at any point in time, even if it's 100 people who voted in the election, if the person gets 50 plus 1, the person becomes your president. That is different from how the referendum clauses have been fashioned out, which requires the total number of valid total number of people who have registered in the system. So that's why I wanted to make the distinction. And in terms of the report, it might send a wrong signal that, okay, people are not interested, it might go for a runoff. However, if those who decide to vote on that day happen to even be 10%, and a political party decides to get 50 plus 1, it matters not that 90% of Ghanaians decided not to vote.
No, but that's part of the discussion, that it doesn't appear any of the two will get the one-touch victory by the number of votes required.
No, agreed. But I'm just saying that even if we decide to go to at a point in time, I concede the fact that when we get to the election year, activities, and this whole election is also sometimes become cultural. There are instances where some of us are coming from. You have an instance where people will be calling you. You might decide not to vote, but the societal pressure that will bring to bear on you to go and vote that day is even massive.
That's true. Okay, so I don't know what you make of the biometric system introduction. So let's find out what you think about the biometric system introduction and all the brouhaha about it from the EC's own reports on the acquisition of the new voter management system. They say that the Commission has since 2012, the 2012 elections, been using biometric technology to create a more credible voter register and for verification of voters on voting day. What they are seeking to get is increase the credibility of the Ghanaian electoral system by engendering trust in the electoral process, reducing electoral fraud, reducing voter impersonation, and reducing multiple voting. They say that the current system has challenges, and the challenges include what they say is that the previous STL in their report, June 2018, suggests that other biometric and IT consultants and information gathered from daily operations and running of the last referendum in 2018 and limited registration and exhibition exercise in 2019 show challenges. Server, storage, networking hardware at the data center on which the biometric verification machines applications run are all obsolete and have reached end of use and end of support. End of use and end of support. They give several other reasons why it should not be relied on, and then come to this point that if you use the new system, we'll have a hardware vendor agnostic software solution that will run on commercial of the shelf device, preventing vendor lock-in. But among other things, they say fraud will be eliminated, and you know, all the problems you seem to have with your current system will be dealt with.
That's a good one. If you look at what you have said, all that they want is a credible register. But because if you're talking about free and fair elections, you need a credible register that will be able to be accepted by everybody. So this effort by EC is a good one. My worry is that once you have brought on board the IPAC, you should be able to let them sit down and you discuss this issue. It doesn't cost anything sitting down with IPAC where the parties are in there and you discuss all these merits.
You are constitutionally independent. If the IPAC does not agree, what should you do?
Yeah, but then why
did
you create that body? You knew from the word go that yes, you are an independent body, you have what it takes to do whatever. But here you are, you created that system. If you don't want that system, kick it out. Okay, but once you want it, you have to be able to accommodate it.
That's my question to you.
Yeah.
If that IPAC cannot agree, and you are constitutionally independent, you are not subject to anybody's directions.
Yes.
What should you do?
They operate. The Electoral Commission operates on 3 principles. If you remember, IPAC is an advisory body. If you give an advice to the EC and the EC finds out, look, this thing is going to cost me, and for that reason, I'm not going to have the money, you can drop it. Another point is that they can also look at things that are practical. If what you are saying is not practical, is not feasible, I'm afraid it's an advice. It will be thrown into the lake of fire. And then the other third one is that they always want to go along with the law. These are the three principles that guide the operation of EC. And all to ensure that the register is clean, transparent, and all that. My worry is that once you've created this body, you should be able to let them sit down with them and then talk about issues that will all lead us to where we want to be. And for me, that is what is missing.
You haven't answered my question. If they don't agree, and they often don't agree.
Yeah, if they don't agree, then you push the EC to the wall, the EC will go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, because they operate on these 3 principles. And if they open their doors for discussion and you are not ready to accept this, then you hit the dead end. EC will go ahead. Yes. When you look at all this thing, you can also give some credit to the political parties. For instance, NDC. I had a conversation with their IT specialists and all that they went for the meeting, as Kweju has already said, and that they were just surprised by the exercise that was going to take place, because earlier on that was not the discussion. They wanted to have a full discussion on the matter so that they can also make input.
Koku just showed you letters here that suggest that you shouldn't be saying that you are surprised, because the agenda was known.
That is what they were saying. They said there were some instances where even some minutes that they wanted to see and read so that they could continue the discussion for the day, they were not served without. All that I'm saying that is one driving force behind any election is transparency. So if somebody feels that, look, there is information you are hiding from me, from the word go, you present the mind of people with regard to what the exercise was. Remember, all of them also want the good for this country. So I don't see the point you are at each other's throat. That should not come in. Right. Having said this, I think I will touch on the Afrobarometer report. The figure that CDD brought out, when you sum all those who don't want to vote, those who don't want to declare for now, and all that 42, it's a very worrying situation. Because if you have a democracy young as we have, even though we've gone through about 7 elections, consolidating it, these are some of the worrying signs. Because then, if people feel that democracy is not yielding the dividends that we want, then you are likely to encounter what they call democratic reversals, where people believe that the old order that we have changed, we should go back, which you have already alluded to. But that is, we are likely to pay a heavy price for such an enterprise. So at this point, you realize that we need to do a lot of things in order to fix it. Because one other important thing that we cannot lose sight on is the fact that cost is very, very, very important. And the cost can be anything. Legitimacy, yes, you don't have most people saying that we support you, put you into office, then it becomes difficult to what govern and leads you to what governance crisis. And once you get into governance crisis, then people believe that democracy has not become the only game in town. It's something else. All right. But my hope is that it's too early, even though it's a useful, information for those in government and those in opposition, because this one is free of charge. You have to go out there and do this survey and come and use it for your own benefit. Somebody has done it. Grab it, sit down, put politics aside, and then interrogate the issues and put it into planning. For me, that is a better way, because what we are having, if the situation remains, what it means is that you are going, all things being good, we are going for election where nobody will have a first round victory. And once you come there, remember anytime we go for a second round, there is a need for us to call for what? Funding and all that. Professor Jimabwedi wrote an article, a beautiful one. We rely on donors and all that for elections. He said the cost of doing nothing. If you don't support yourself and all the time when you get into such situation, you rely on donors and all that, the day they will hold you to ransom, you are in constitutional crisis. And this is something we want to what? Avoid at this time. But I believe that from now up to 2020, a lot of things are going to be brought on bear, and that will change the dynamics. One, we are going to see the running mate coming out from each of the parties, and that will also inform people as to the direction they want to take.
Nanado's running mate is known.
Yeah, but NDC one has not come out. All right. So then 2, we are talking about also the manifestos, which is major policies of would-be government or governments. And these people want to look, interrogate.
Do people really vote on the back of manifestos?
Yes, but it's needed. Whether it's the guide, a good guide for governance.
All right.
If you don't have it, there is no way you can gauge the conduct of every government. Right. So we need it. And remember, out of this, messages are born.
Right.
Messages that will really influence the choices of voters.
One district, one factory.
We need other. But recent research has shown that if you really want to hit the first round, you should be doing, NDC for instance must be doing 48.9% on the average for all the regions. Then they are getting closer. Then MPP must hit about 46.5%. Other opposition parties about 4.47%. Remember, spoiled ballot is now an important variable in this type of equation, which we cannot lose sight on. So although we are saying that this worrying signal, we are likely to work against it.
All right. Okay. Koku, you were putting your hand up. Just a minute.
I was saying that this tug of war, as it were, over whether we need a new register or not, even the biometric, introduction of biometric. It's always like that.
Right.
At the end of the day, we are able to resolve the matters. When Abu, the NPP was asking for a new register, talking about this Togo and all that, the EC couldn't do it. So Abu went to the court for a clean-up rather than an entirely new one. So at the end of the day, if there's any party that is against what the EC wants to do, I think they know the way to the courts.
Okay. Now, I'll read this briefly and then we take a break and return to deal with our last issue. Because the EC has not actually given a full-blown explanation to everybody to know what is going on, let's take advantage and do this. It says that it proves to be very useful in cases of electoral fraud related to identity theft, in cases where it is impossible to authenticate the voter, or when statistics on persons registered to vote have been artificially inflated due to the introduction of fictitious voters. The appropriate and meaningful use of this technology goes a long way to ensure the fairness of the ballot. The acceptance of its use by the Ghanaian voting public is dependent on how well it is able to correctly identify people and also correctly eliminate voter fraud. The quality of the voters register plays an overriding role in this decision. An obsolete, incomplete voters register cannot be used as an adequate basis for an electoral or referendum process to ensure the principle of one man, one vote. In our tense political climate, where there is a total lack of trust between the different parties involved in the electoral process, biometrics can itself become something of a double-edged sword. It may help to resolve problems with the identification of voters and prevent fraud of a certain type, but it cannot by itself render an electoral process reliable, credible, and transparent. This IT system that support this biometric system must be modern, secure, reliable, and have the necessary performance to meet tight electoral timetables and demanding service requirements. The current system in place simply cannot meet the requirement to support the 2020 general election and beyond. It is therefore not a question of whether the system should be changed. It is a question of when and the time is now. I think you should note the very last portion. The current system in place simply cannot meet the requirement to support the 2020 general election and beyond. It is therefore not a question of whether the system should be changed. It is a question of when, and the time is now. All right, thank you very much. We take a break. When we return, we ask questions about the scars of the revolution. Be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. My guests have been Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, Director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD Ghana. Dennis Ajay Jomo is a lawyer. And Dr. Kwame Asa Asante, Senior Lecturer, Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. And Abdel Malik Kweku Bako, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Of course, earlier we're joined by the teacher, Kwamina Ahena Kwashi. All right. So, as you have followed, on Thursday, Joy News aired one of its bigger documentaries. They've been doing documentaries trying to look back into this country's history, past, particularly the areas that had, difficulties for the country, seeking to bring the history back to people who perhaps were not born and did not know what happened, and refreshing their minds. But this time, it does appear that one of the purposes was to seek complete closure to some of the matters that had come up as a result of the revolution. And as you may have followed, you would have discovered that the reports of the Reconciliation Commission was not fully implemented. Some people are still asking for their compensation, and certain things that ought to be done to some other people like Odate Wellington have not been done, and people are not excited about that. But let's begin with Koku. What do you make? I think there's this aspect about these documentaries that this question that people continue to ask. I don't know what you make of it. People say, this is our past, let's bury it. We don't need to go rake them up, and that you are hurting when you do so. I don't know what you think.
Well, I have no such difficulty. This is history in motion. That's the way I describe the documentary. You say it's a special assignment.
Yeah.
Yes. Out of it are coming documentaries.
Right.
I believe this is the second one.
Yeah.
Yes. I have no problems with the rationale. I can't make an ethical judgment on it that now or never. No. Let's leave. It's our history.
Right.
We had the NRC, which was a major project based on an act of parliament spanning from 1957 to 1993. We left out the constitutional period for good reasons. And a lot of people went there, expressed their feelings, some wept. So many things happened there. But you see, there were still loopholes. There were still missing links. Somebody like Mr. Rawlings, he did not, the invitations that were sent to him, I think we all know the history. He ignored the invitations until he was subpoenaed on two things: to produce the Amatekwe audio recording and the Air Force Station extrajudicial execution video, which he said he had given to is it W.O. Tete, who had died. And that was it. So you see, Mr. Rawlings' own quote-unquote absence, and I put that, I think I used it adversedly, in terms of testimony on the issues related to AFIC and PNDC, meant that there was still a huge gap in that NRC project. I'm told my very good friend Akatapori is also making some commentaries and even apologizing. He also was not present. That also was a huge hole. So in spite of the value of the NRC project, there were still gaps. To that extent, I see nothing wrong with people trying to dig further, okay? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you see, and it's a very emotive thing because of the incidents. You know, we are not talking here of specific incidents. I'm told there was this lady, Osofubi, who was killed.
Sorry.
You know, yes, that was 31st December. You see, because of the personality of Rawlings being the common denominator between the AFIC and PNDC, sometimes some of the timelines of the events are confused and brought together different times. And it's part of what I've been seeing in some of the commentaries. But whatever it is, we are looking at the excesses of the June 4th insurrection and the 31st December coup d'etat, not revolutions. Excesses, let's agree, there were excesses. I supported June 4th, and I still do in principle. And I'm defended by this constitution that says that if any soldier or anybody seeks to suspend this constitution or abrogate it, when that happens, we are entitled to take up all means at our disposal, including force, to restore the constitution. In fact, what we have done with the Fourth Republican Constitution is it will add a new element that, assuming when we reverse, after a while, you are compensated for engaging in that legitimate exercise of bringing back the Constitution. And that is what June 4th was all about. It was a counter coup. It was an insurrection. See, let me tell you something. There was a general, Pali, then attached to the Ghana Army in 1959. He said something very profound, and I quote, says, do not use the army as a political weapon. Keep the army out of politics and do not allow uniformed men to meddle in politics. Politics amongst the military will wreck the army. The army in politics will wreck the state. I don't, looking back, I was a 25-year-old militant, radical youth. I went out there to shout, let the blood flow. I did. People died. I'm talking here of June 4th. I'm now 65 years old. That's 40 years ago. I'm old. I've got some more wisdom. I look back, I regret the loss of lives. But now who caused them? How did lance corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, if you like, decide to insurrect and constitute a government? Look, the army had collapsed. There was total institutional decay. The Ghana Armed Forces was on the brink of collapse. And it was because we ignored this wise saying by General Pali. We unleashed an animal we couldn't control. Soldiers moved from the barracks, officers were working in civil sector. Bank of Ghana, Cocoa Board, living in Laboni, Kanda Estates, driving in not the Pinsguas, but the Benzes and the rest. Those soldiers became different from those who were in the barracks. The army itself, you see, the army is an institution in possession of force.
That's right.
By law.
Yeah.
But once they decided to combine that possession of force with control and command of civil power, the army became an abnormal institution. It changed its character, whether you like it or not. The very moment the army intervened in civil politics, the nature of that institution changed. And once they continued, don't forget, by the time of June 4th, we had the highest level of military involvement in our politics, Supreme Military Council. You only become a member by virtue of your service command position. It was no longer the ordinary conventional junta. So, well, the excesses came, and that's why I supported the NRC project. Even in the Third Republic, people like us, including Boachijan, Bachanfo, Mensa Poku, publicly admitted there were excesses. Publicly, and asked the Liman government that let's do a fact-finding commission, not to touch the transitional provisions per se. There was a way around it. Look at it. Let's see where the excesses were and see what we can do about it without necessarily even touching the transitional provisions. It became a huge crisis in this country.
Yesterday, Odate Wellington's daughter was saying something on the morning show that if you listen to Mr. Rawlings himself, the interview that he gave the foreign press, he was saying that there was a constitutional arrangement ahead, as in elections.
Yes.
And for her, that tells her that it was needless to have intervened in the manner that that was done. And you had Sergeant Alolga Katapori also come on the show and give an apology. And in his apology, he says he regrets more particularly because no gains were made. And that if there was something to celebrate about, you know, and that let's listen to, let's listen briefly and come back. Just a couple of messages from the resulting from the scars of the revolution documentary.
I personally think that Jerry Rawlings should lead all those of us who, you know, but I was particularly involved in 31st December. But he hasn't been, having been the person from 15th May, 4th June, and then 31st as well. I think that he should take the leadership and then apologize, you see, unconditionally for what has happened, not only to the individual, but to the country as a whole. Because in many ways, what is happening now is exactly what was happening before we took over. So we've not moved forward. We've rather gone back with a lot of casualties. And the only beneficiaries being him and his cousins, who have made lots and lots of money, you know, and it is disgusting. So the starting point is for him to deliver an unconditional apology, and then to, you know, encourage the other presidents.
Forgive me, Sergeant. I'm just supposed to, you know, professionally mention that the accusations you're making have not been independently verified by us. There's the accusation of him and his cousins making lots of money. We haven't been able to independently verify that.
I agree that I haven't shown you bank accounts and so on. Maybe they can declare their assets.
Okay, so you've made the point of a need for an apology, and you've also mentioned that you yourself, you know, had a role to play in the 31st December. Have you made apologies yourself?
Listen, I haven't got the platform, but anytime that I get the opportunity and I meet individuals who have been hurt or were victims, I apologize completely. And look, I've not been able to talk about my role and so on about 31st because I've not apologized to certain individuals yet. I need to apologize to those individuals first before I can talk about my role, what I did for the 2 years leading to the coup. You see, the other sad point about this is that the plan of this coup started, you know, in 1979. So how could Liman and have had a chance to succeed? So look, there were mistakes that we made, and we've got to accept them and apologize. Personally, however, I was involved, and it's true that I was one of the key architects of 31st. I will never run away from that. And I can't apologize enough. I'm so sorry about all that happened. And the reason why there's a need for an apology is that nothing was achieved. You see, if we had achieved something, then you could say that, okay, even though there have been casualties, these are the gains. Now, there is nothing to point to as benefits. So look, on my part, I'm absolutely sorry, and I feel so stupid to have been part of this whole scheme.
I just listened to Akatapori talking. I didn't realize that this activity was so close to me. Hearing his apology means so much to me. I couldn't talk because I didn't realize how much it meant to me to hear him apologize so profusely. All I want to say is thank him for coming out and speaking this truth. And he wants to know how many lives he affected because of what he did. Thank you.
All right, so you heard Sergeant Alolga Akatapore, and then right after he delivered his apology, this appears to be the first time that this lady was hearing him apologize in the manner he did. And she was a victim. And this is how she appreciated the apology that was given. So you were just about...
the lady is General Dati Wellington's wife.
No, this is a lady who called onto the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, because I was going to say that General Odati Wellington was a casualty relative to June 4th.
June 4th, right.
Not 31st.
Right, right.
Akatapori, yes, key factor in 31st, but also part of June 4th in terms of the ranks who were back in it. He's a good friend of mine.
You've heard Budukumsin talk about how he became suicidal and, you know, because he had to be put in such an invidious position between, you know, his bosses and, you know,
basically
all
escorted
of that.
them to the
escorted them to the firing squad, and they got there and the thing was not prepared and they had to watch how that was being made ready. You know, you are getting ready to be killed and you are watching all of that. So he took a decision to drive them away, and he makes me understand that saying driving doesn't mean he was the one driving. But he, you know, made the necessary orders. So they were driven away so they don't see the preparation. Just come and face it. But I think that for me,
we don't
focus,
have time.
Yeah.
We don't have time.
Okay, quickly. Just your, you know, your concluding points. Yeah.
That's why this thing is a bit emotive.
Right.
And many years later, so I want to be a bit, you know, careful.
Right.
But you see, the General Palace wise words hold.
The whole truth today.
I'm telling you. You see, you remember Afrifa? he wrote a very prophetic letter to Achampon.
Yes.
Saying that he could see one day, even his CPP boys in the army and things, will gang up, effect a counter coup, line all of them from 1966 to the time, and shoot them at the stakes. He wrote that, and Achampon leaked it to the media, for the media to
But Okwe has published in his book, page 224, is there.
Look, that's why it's good. We all should be committed to this constitutional order, regardless of its deformities and imperfections.
Okay.
If a soldier takes up the gun to overthrow the constitution, he becomes a running and a walking illegality forever and ever.
Okay,
that's why they come for the indemnity clauses.
Okay, so Doc,
we don't have time. I have so much to say on this matter. See, but we have to be a bit.
We have gone past this. Yeah. So what's the point?
A last point. The NRC, there were some payments done.
Yes.
You know that.
Yes, but there are people who have still come forward to say Odifu Asare's wife spoke about his. We had Palmer Buckle in the documentary saying that people still call him.
And more substantive things like the building up monuments, institutional changes.
Exactly.
We haven't done.
All right.
Yes, so we have a problem still.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the point in revisiting all this pain?
Yes, we need to tell the story. I was a small boy, 12 years, and my hometown is Ekropong. This is where General Kufu comes from. They were looking for him. IGP then, before that time, was NSACO, also from Ekropong. So you can see, Ekropong was the action spot. I was in Form 1. I saw that. Later I came to Legon and I read a lot about military politics and all that. But you see, what has brought us to this level is a typical feature of Ghanaian politics, where you see sycophancy, you see people doing the wrong thing and people support them simply because they will benefit from it. All right? Not only that, you see economic decadence that really give cause to soldiers to use as justification for staging coups. Not only that, but also the indiscipline within the military itself. But you can understand if you read this work by Okwe, where you talk about theories of what are the reasons that account for people overthrowing government. It gives a lot of theory. We don't have time. But one of it is the group identification theory, where people, because of where they train, like some heads, monks, and all the Imperial College, they want to see things happening this way. And that was the yardstick with which a FIFA gauge Osaje Funkroma saying that he has made a CPP branch of the army and all that. This story continues from the so-called liberators to redeemers, to revolutionaries, and then provisional governments which lasted for 11 years. All right, these things continue and brought us to this far. I am happy, and I must also say that I was a reporter at the National Reconciliation, and I listened to gory tales of human rights violations. I listened. But if you read the report of the National Reconciliation, it made interesting reparations, right, for institutions, for groups, for professional bodies, and all that. And one of it is what addresses your problem, that we should set up reconciliation fund that will be able to pay people like this who come later, because that opportunity.
Rehabilitation fund. That's how the commission described it.
Yes.
They called it what?
Rehabilitation
fund.
Reparation fund.
And which has not been set up.
No, we never did. Even the monuments, we didn't.
If you read the report, it tells you that presidents should be able to apologize openly to victims.
Yes, that's right.
Right. We haven't done that. It is also true that some monies were, made to people and all that, and some also who have property have been seized were given to them. For instance, Association International was given back to the owner and all that.
There were others that were difficult to do because third parties have
and that one the report also gives a way that the state should enter, but not in a way to also take it from the third party. All right,
restitution.
So, if we look at all these things, I think, and we look at it carefully, regime by regime, we'll be able to do, because you see, transitional justice is a long process. You don't end one day. It takes a long time. And the approach that we took, the truth and reconciliation, all right, there are elements in there that we need to address, and that the report is able to give us. So all that we need is
even today we should revisit that and make sure what has not been done is
done. We need to put in place.
We need to
we
set
up an implementation team, National Reconciliation Implementation Team. I don't know what has happened to it now. They did the earlier payments.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that even set up, you know, you mark a day. You should have a day that you can talk about national reconciliation and it should be one-off thing. All right. We should be able to all these things.
Okay.
And when regimes, when people take over from others, they should make conscious effort to do it, because otherwise the pain will be there. And one day it may have what? A boomerang effect on the system.
Okay.
And we don't want to go there.
Dr. Santis, so here we are, like I said, we have long gone past this place. 40 years on, Kuku saying, never seen Kuku speaking and his voice shake. Yeah. I saw that. I saw it. Now, we have also come to a point where our democracy is beyond this. So what's our fear? Why do we want to tell the story and then use it to tell people that we should never get to this stage? Because we will not get to that stage. Will we?
Well, my family has a personal story, but I've, chosen to keep it private because, I mean, when you raise this matter, it brings a lot of emotions. And there's a lot of hurt that people have not forgotten about. Because a lot of the characters still are very much alive.
Right.
And you live with them. So that's why we should also be surprised when a documentary like that comes out, the reaction you get from different people. Because some people see particular people as heroes. Others see them as perpetrators, so. But what is critical for me is the NRC report and the process of institutionalization, because if we don't learn the lessons from the past, and the NRC is comprehensive, my center was very much involved in crafting the legislation, setting up the National Reconciliation Coalition and all of that. There's so much there in terms of how we're going to run our police, our army, all
the
of
prisons,
that. We have not gone back.
So we should go back to the implementation.
We have to go back to it, because there is a large chunk of Ghanaians who are born free from coup d'etats. They never experienced any of those things. And the process of getting history, because the history is so contested, people are confused as to what exactly happened. Even getting at some point getting videos from GBC was a problem. So I think we should see our ugliness, because that is the thing. We don't like to peer into the bad things we do, but it's important for our own healing.
All right. All right. So you also agree we should revisit the implementation?
We should, and we must also commend Joy for doing that documentary, because I realize in this country, when people, for foreigners, media houses come and do a documentary, we all are for it. Immediately it's being done by a Ghanaian, then all of a sudden think about an agenda among other things. And if you read through case law will reveal some of them where, Group Captain PK Jekum, some people went to court, but by reason of the transition we couldn't do anything about it. So we need to get to it.
I'm sorry, but we have run out of time, and the more you continue to talk about this chilling history of our time,
we need to.
Okay, my guests have been Abdul Malik Okubaku, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Dr. Kwame Asante, he is senior lecturer, Department of Political Science, University of Ghana, Legon. Dennis Ejay Jumo is a lawyer, and Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is director, Advocacy and Policy Engagement, CDD Ghana. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini, and as always, my outfit is by Latida. It's Christmas time. Look for some Latida shirts as gifts for your friends and family.
They look good.
Thank you. Thank you.